like I said, I came to SAU in 2000 and graduated in '05. So I spent 5 years here. Probably should have been out before, but didn't quite happen that way. I actually came in as an engineering major and decided that wasn't the field for me. And so I'd always been around agriculture and went into agriculture because I just was interested in it and figured I better pick something interesting so I could actually get engaged in class and understand what was going on. And so I graduated in '05 with an ag science degree, and didn't really have a clue what I was going to do when I graduated. Thought about going on to, getting a master's or something like that, but didn't really have a clue. And a friend of mine had gone to work for Progressive a year before I did, and told me that they were hiring. And so I applied right before I got out of college, and I actually was hired the Thursday before I graduated. And so went basically from college on Friday to Progressive on Monday, and didn't have a clue about the insurance industry or anything about it. I just knew it was a job and I needed a job, and so that was it. And I've been worrying. I know that when you get ready to graduate, you start thinking about what you're going to do, and you don't know, and you kind of get worried about it because you got all this stuff going on. And everybody's expecting you to have a plan and expecting you to go and and get a job, and you don't know what to do. But don't worry about it. Just do what you can and keep looking. And the main thing is find something that you're interested in doing, because you're going to spend a large part of your life doing it. So you better enjoy going to work every day, or it's going to be really tough to do. And so I went to work, like I said, with Progressive, and started as handling just general claims, handling every facet of them, and then from there specialized and went into working injury claims for a while, for about 4 or 5 years, and then went back to working on a physical damage adjuster for Progressive now, and so I write estimates. But as far as the industry field, or industry as a whole, you never know how many aspects there are until you get involved in it. I mean, you think about it, you see the commercials and everything, and it's like, well, you're either an adjuster or you're an agent, and that's it. But as a company, we have accountants that work for us, attorneys that work for us, IT people, of course, and so there's many fields you can go into if you're wanting to go into the insurance field that doesn't have to do specifically with just working claims. And the good thing about with Progressive, you can go anywhere and move anywhere, and depending on what you want to do, specialize and go anywhere you want to go. And so if you find something that interests you, you can go into that field, and they can they'll get you trained and get you ready to go. As far as my day-to-day activities, one of the major things that I've learned since going to work there is the customer service aspect. Is because next to a house, most people, when they purchase a car, is probably their next biggest investment in their, that they make. And so when something happens to it, one, it's a traumatizing situation because they've just been in a wreck or whatever, has happened to them. And two, if it's bad enough, they're without a vehicle. And that was something I had to learn as far as, the customer service piece of that, and learning how to, talk to people and to, find out what their needs are and address them. Because people, like I said, whenever something like that happens, it's a pretty traumatic experience for a lot of people. And so I guess one of the good things is you get to deal with people and help them to get through that experience and get them back on the road, or get them back where they should be, and take care of getting them back to the place they were before. And that's a pretty gratifying experience because they're very appreciative of that. And to see that occur, and to be able to put your hands on something and watch it get repaired when it looks like there's no way it can be, is a pretty neat experience. Now, as far as everybody, as far as y'all are all seniors, correct? And so you're not.
You may be the only one.
I'm not either.
You're not a senior either?
I'll graduate next December.
Okay. Both of y'all are, everybody in here is going to graduate next year.
Yeah.
At some point next year.
Good.
You said he was a sophomore.
You are? Oh, I didn't know that. I thought everybody in here was.
You got plenty of time.
Yeah, you got lots of
really enjoy your
time.
college experience for a little while longer.
Yeah.
He plays football here.
Oh, good deal. Got a pretty good year this year. Huh? Well, it's a pretty, for me, whenever I graduated, it was really kind of, it was such a change because you get into so much of that college mentality of, what you do every day. And then when you go to work, it's, and you're on that 8 to 5 schedule or whatever schedule you're on, it's a pretty big change. And so it took me a while to get used to that. So enjoy the time you have while you're here. And if you're a sophomore, or not ready to graduate yet, get involved and get out there and get involved in some things on campus. When I came to school here, I was pretty quiet, I'll put it that way, and would have never been able to do, any kind of, I didn't really want to get out of my shell, to be honest with you. And after I got involved on campus here and got involved in activities and certain things, I was an RA for a couple of years. It helped to prepare me to where I got to work, one, to interact with people, because it's a change when you go into a work environment and you start interacting with people on a daily basis that are different from you as far as whatever, and you have to learn how to work with everybody. Everybody's personalities are different, and learn how to work with them and be successful doing that. And things I did here at SAU as far as getting involved with different activities to put me out there, working with people on committees or whatever, really shaped me and provided that foundation to be able to get out and learn to work with people. Y'all have a nice campus now. Like when I was here, they didn't have this.
This was the nicest building on campus when we were here.
It was. Everybody, Tally Hall was it. Now y'all have really nice residence halls that. I think the apartments were here the first year or last year I was here.
Yeah, you were RA in the village, right? There's a few of you guys that live in the village, aren't there? You
And I
do?
think David.
Yeah, when I lived in my apartment, nobody had ever lived there before. It was the very first.
And they've recently remodeled them too. Or
They did.
did some changes to the floor and stuff, took the carpet out.
Yeah, I don't never understand why they put carpet in there. I figured they would have probably gone with
I
a more
think
hardwood option.
There was a lot of mold and stuff, and I think they went and cleaned all that
Oh, really?
and stuff.
Well, yeah, that was the first, we set all that up, and I was the first group of people to move into that. And that was a big change for this campus, because they had never had an apartment situation before, and people didn't really know what to.
Now they have private bathrooms, or just 4 people that use a bathroom. We didn't have, y'all don't know how lucky you are. We didn't have any of that.
That's right, yeah, we had community showers.
We pay a lot more now, those people than they.
Yeah, the tuition has changed.
Yeah, tuition's more.
But it's changed a lot. It's a lot nicer. It wasn't bad then, but it's nicer. And more.
The cafeteria's a lot better now too.
Yeah, that's a positive too. I spent 5 years in that thing.
It's a lot better than it was then.
Well, good. Well,
Lots of improvements. It's not
Avoid that
bad.
place
It's not bad.
I didn't see what it was.
We didn't have a Chick-fil-A. Y'all have a Chick-fil-A?
No, yeah, we
Did
had.
Chick-fil-A even exist back then? How long
Yes,
has
Chick-fil-A existed. We're not that
How long
old.
Chick-fil-A's been around?
They,
10 years.
we had a pizza bar. That was about it. And they built the new cafeteria. I guess you had they could cook your own pizzas or whatever, and that was something different. But we didn't have any of it. We had the old Bruce Inn was the cafeteria then.
Oh,
So
yep.
it's changed a lot. You have any questions? Oh, it was pretty short, but mine. I started, like I said, I've been with Progressive for 12 years, and it started right after I got out of college.
So they asked some questions last time when we were kind of talking about you coming about exactly what does an adjuster do? Are you looking for ways to try to not pay the claim? Talk about if you issues like that or
Right.
fraud, people try to, are you the first person that would notice if this was not what they say it is?
We are. If an accident occurs, after it's reported, we're the first ones that touch it. The way we're set up, we handle it kind of differently. Most companies are doing now. Basically you have an inside adjuster that makes contact with the customer, takes a statement about what happened, and either, depending on what their situation is, either arranges to get the vehicle to a shop for repairs, and then addresses any other concerns as far as injuries or anything like that. We never look for. The goal is always to pay the claim. We're always trying to find a way to pay the claim. That's the essential goal of an adjuster. You never want to not pay one. Like I said, you want to find whatever way you can within that policy to pay the claim. based on, now the scenarios that come up as far as, within the policy, if things are not the way they should be or something like that, there are coverage investigations that occur, based on whatever scenario there is. And sometimes we don't end up paying one. But if there's a way possible, we try to. But basically the flow is, once it gets to repair facility, they'll send someone like me out. We'll estimate the damages, get an agreed price with the shop that's doing the work, and then get the vehicle repaired and get back on the road. Now, if there's an injury, basically what happens is we'll meet with those injured parties, talk with them about what's going on, figure out what kind of injury they have sustained, look at their medical records, if there's the reports from the doctors that have seen them recently, determine what their best course of action is. Some people want to just, they're ready to settle the claim and resolve it and move on. Some people require treatment and it goes on for an extended period of time. You never want to see someone hurt in an auto accident, but unfortunately it does happen. And so the goal is to resolve that claim as fast as possible, but at the same time, whatever's best for the customer to get them back to where they were. The ultimate goal is to restore them to where they were before the wreck occurred. Materially as far as the vehicle
And they know what that word's called, right? What he just said. Indemnification.
That's
Good
right.
job.
That's the ultimate goal, is to properly indemnify the customer. And now you mentioned fraud. Fraud is huge. Most people, if you're paying insurance, you understand the rates are pretty high. And a lot of that's driven because of the fraud that's out there. I think they say an annual, it's like 80 billion or something like that. It's an insane number of fraud. And most of it goes undetected. I mean, there's a specific, most companies have a specific, branch that handle that, most special investigations. Then they have all kinds of systems and they monitor that stuff. And what happens is that whenever, eventually, if you do it enough times, your name gets out there in the system, and repetitive customers, as far as, with specific scenarios and things of that nature, get flagged. And people, they investigate it and talk to all the parties and figure out if that's something that's going on or what, and then, get the Department of Insurance involved and try to get it taken care of. So I've had a couple of claims like that where we've caught, suspected fraud rings of, people basically with injury claims. Injury is a big deal, not only on the customer side of it, a lot of times on the provider side too. I mean, there's providers out there that will run up bills, and try to get what they can out of it, under the blanket of treatment, and so that's a big deal. And this area of the country, it happens, but it's not near as big, but in the bigger cities, you have, a lot of theft rings and steal cars and take them apart and sell them, and everything like that. That's a large thing that they deal with. Of course, everybody sees the commercials of the swooping squad and everything, when people set up people and pull in front of them and slam on the brakes to cause a wreck, and that does happen as well. But a lot of times it's the injury, and not so much that people may or may not be injured, but maybe that they're exacerbated a little bit or exaggerated, and so that's the kind of that's mainly probably where a lot of it occurs, and then, like I said, most of it goes undetected because there's just no way to catch it, and especially if someone doesn't, if it's more of an opportunistic fraud where it's like, hey, this car, the damage back here on the rear door is related to the wreck too, and it's related to the front, that happens a lot. People try to include damages that didn't occur in the wreck to get it all fixed at the same time. And that's probably the most that I deal with, is that kind of stuff right there. And sometimes you pay it, and sometimes you don't. It's just if there's enough evidence to support that it's not, it was already there, then you can go another direction with it. But the main goal of that is to kind of control that fraud, because it's a big expense, and like I said, we all pay for it. Now it's funny because this weekend I was actually just talking with some guys, and they had, of course, there's been several bus accidents that happened, over the last couple of.
Like school buses?
Yeah, like the one up there in well, I guess it was West Helena that rented, all their coaches rented the buses and whatever, and we were talking about that and talking about scenarios, and they had talked about times that they'd seen, wrecks occur, and people actually get out of different cars and run up there and act like they were part of the car, that had been in the wreck to get medical treatment and make an injury claim. And so that's the hardest, probably one of the hardest parts is telling people no, because that's not, nobody likes to hear it and nobody likes to say it. Most people don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But a lot of times you have to do that. But like I said, mainly the main thing I want to stress is that we want to pay every claim it's a valid claim.
So we've talked about like minimum coverages a lot. Do you see a lot of accidents that people don't have the proper coverages?
We do, and it's better now. Arkansas's minimum limits are $25,000 per accident for an injury claim and $50,000 or $25,000.
It's actually a lot better than a lot of other states. I was surprised by that.
Correct. And $25,000 for property damage too. Texas has finally moved up to 30 and 60 now. They used to be 15. Louisiana used to be 10. And $10,000 on a car, that's the lowest I've seen. I think they've changed it. I think they're moved up to 25 now as well. And some states are pure comparative states which basically means there's not any third party liability coverage. Everybody handles their own
Everybody's
damages.
their own. We've talked about that too.
Michigan, I think, is one of those states to where everybody just pays a premium for collision coverage.
Which kind of helps cut down on some of the fraud a little bit.
It does. And I haven't dealt with much of that. Like I said, everybody down here seems to be kind of.
You cover Arkansas and Texas. Do you do Louisiana? Do you do all three states?
Yes, ma'am. We do Louisiana if they come into Arkansas for repairs.
Okay.
We have a lot of people from Spring Hill and Shongaloo and areas down there that come up to like this area to have their vehicle fixed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't handle claims down in Louisiana. But when you're filling out your own insurance policies, like mine used to be the minimum limits, but keep that in mind. Hopefully you never get in a wreck, but if you do, there's not many cars out there that you can purchase for $25,000 these days, and it seems to be those are getting worse and worse. The cost of vehicles, and so say if you were to have a wreck and something happens to your car and it runs off the road and hits a bunch more cars, which has happened a lot. Then all of a sudden $25,000 doesn't go very far, and the company would try to negotiate with the other companies to minimize the cost of that and get them to sign off and say they'll take a certain amount of money to call it good. But a bad case scenario would be if somebody didn't have full coverage on their oon policy and they couldn't go through it, and they just had liability, and that's a bad situation. And so it's important that you research your limits and find one that's appropriate to limit your exposure if you have a wreck. Hopefully nobody does, but it does happen. So that's one of the main things. I never knew that. I always kept minimum limits.
I think the majority of people do. I don't think most people probably, and their agents, I think, fail them by not explaining it. And
maybe not, which is surprising. You think that they would, because exactly, and full coverage is a broad term. A lot of people will say, well, I've got full coverage insurance, and basically, if you ask for full coverage insurance with an agent, most of the time that I've seen, a lot of times it's just, your comprehensive and collision, which basically covers if you hit somebody or hit something with your vehicle, or if you hit an animal or hail or, a natural disaster kind of deal. Or in your liability, which covers, the damages to someone else's vehicle and their injuries. But like the rental car coverage is not, it's something you have to specifically ask for if you wanted added. Uninsured motorists and stuff like that is something that you have to ask for, which is a good coverage to have because there's a lot of people that drive around without insurance.
Yeah, we've talked about that too. We actually had, our book I think says like 15%, but another agent that was here said in Arkansas, the stuff that he's seen is said closer to 20%.
I wouldn't doubt that. That's probably a legit estimate, and it may be higher than that in some of the bigger cities, because a lot of times what will happen is, if you take out a policy, you get a card for the last 6 months, and so you can cancel that, and then you've got an insurance card that'll last that long. And if you get, hit someone and if you just had liability or something like that on your policy, it wouldn't cover to fix your vehicle. I mean, you know, collision would, but you have to pay the higher deductible, but if you know, the lower deductible with the uninsured motorist would cover that as well as your, you know, any injuries you sustained as well. You know, we work a lot of uninsured motorist claims. Because also what happens is if you're, you know, like you park in the parking lot and someone hits your car, then that's an uninsured motorist claim. Because
At least now we have cameras around here, so
Sure.
they can find out who it was.
It does help. It does help because, and see, Arkansas is neat because if it's uninsured motorist, at least with us, and you know who hit you, and you have collision, then they'll waive the deductible, so you don't have a deductible on it. But that's a coverage that I think everybody should look into having because it does happen quite a bit. I mean, we work a lot of claims on that, and you could leave yourself exposed if you didn't, you know, if you don't have the coverage to fix it.
So what specifically, so you said you're a property damage adjuster, so tell them, I mean, a lot of them have probably never had an accident or been through a claim process, so they may not know specifically, you know, what you do. So you go to the body shop, because you guys are unique in that you actually do your adjusting there
Yes, ma'am.
at the repair place.
Correct. We do, a lot of companies, depending on the company, some companies just have the shop write an estimate for them. And then they'll work off of that estimate. We like to go out and look at the vehicles and put our hands on them and actually estimate them. And so we go out and we'll have the shop take it apart so we can see all the damages. And then we'll talk with the body shop and figure out what the best course of action is depending on the damage. And then we'll write an estimate, review it with the shop and get an agreed price to do the repairs. And then we'll pay the shop to do those repairs. And then if there's anything else that the shop finds, then of course we'll go back out and take care of it. Like I said, a lot of companies do by, you know, just having the shop write the estimate, and whenever they, you know, they get done, they send them a check. But I mean, I think this way you kind of see, you can kind of, you know exactly what's out there and what's damaged, so we can actually put our.
Well, and you work for Progressive, so it makes sense that you're protecting, you know, your
Right.
involvement protects them from extra things being involved that maybe didn't.
Exactly. You know, I mean, you know, you would hate to see that happen, but with our eyes on it, you know, we can like Megan said, we can make sure that, you know, everything that's on there is needed, and really make sure it's repaired at as most cost effective as it can be, because repairs are expensive these days. I mean, back when I first started with Progressive, if someone hit a deer, it may cost $2,500. You know, I mean, and that's just kind of my estimation. And now those things, we see it up, you know, for 5, 6, 7, 8,000. Just because the cars they're made differently now. Most used to, it was a lot of metal. Now it's a lot more plastic, a lot more composite, things like that. And the parts have gotten extremely high as far as, you know, and so it adds up really fast. And so we want to make sure that we put the right stuff on the estimate to get it back to where it needs to be, but at a cost-effective price. And plus the cost of repairs has gone up from probably around $40 when I started to closer to $60 an hour now. And so that's really, in Texas County, it's $60 and nearly $50 for paint and stuff like that per hour, so it adds up pretty quickly. Thankfully, there's estimating software that adds all it up for you so you don't have to do it.
That's what I was going to say. Did Progressive train you on how to know, I mean, what even the parts are, or how do you know, how did you learn that?
They did. When I first started, I spent 2 weeks in what they call their casualty training, which basically teaches you how to talk to someone on the phone, how to take a statement from somebody about what happened, what questions to ask to them, and then then how to make a liability determination, and then also some stuff on injuries as far as how to figure out, you know, how much. I don't want to say value because it's kind of hard to say that, but I mean, you know, basically, essentially, that's what it is. You know, how much you should be paying on those. And then they sent you to a 2-week class on property damage, because back then you did everything. You didn't have, you know, a separation. The adjuster that you talked to on the front end is the one that handled it all the way through. And now they've specialized and changed that to be more efficient. And so you go to that 2-week program, and we have a system which it's called Mitchell International, that provides an estimating system for us. We write estimates out of those systems, and it has every part, or most parts that are listed on the car in that system. And so you go down through the parts and just, you know, check it off. And in that class, they taught you basically the basic parts of the vehicle. And then also how to estimate time for repairs. You know, and then, but a lot of it now has changed because the cars you see now have got a lot more intricate curves and body lines and everything else to make them look sleeker and more user, you know, more appealing to the customer. And so now the times have kind of gotten larger. Plus, we're seeing a lot of cars now. Back then, they didn't have aluminum. You know, aluminum wasn't something that was widely used except for, you know, on hoods and things of that nature. Now, I mean, Ford makes an aluminum vehicle, and is probably going to move more into that. And then a lot of your higher end vehicles, I think BMW aluminum, and some other vehicles are too. And then some of them are composite now, which used to be not something we had to deal with. And so the materials that are made out of it have changed. And it looks like a lot of the manufacturers are going to start going that direction. I mean, Chevrolet was supposed to go to aluminum vehicles, and they just haven't yet. I guess probably because of the ads they ran, you know, talking about Fords not being the sturdiest thing, but they were supposed to do it as well. And so I think that's something you're going to see more of, which will be more expensive as well. But essentially, too, we manage the repair processes from the time it starts to the time that the vehicle's delivered back to you, which is, I don't know, I've not dealt with many other companies as far as, you know, the customer service side to see if they do that as well, but we stay pretty active with the shops and stay pretty involved with them to make sure we know exactly what all's going on with the vehicle. And then once it's delivered back to the customer, we make sure we follow up and make sure everything's right with the customer. Progressive has really moved towards, not that they haven't always been this way, but they've really taken, I've seen it since I've been there, a really drive and focus on the customer and customer service, and making sure that person is satisfied and you know, we're taking care of every need that they have, and that's, which is kind of something that I like because of the fact that you know, if you're going to do that and you're going to provide a service to someone, you want them to be satisfied and you want them to be taken care of, and so it's good to work for somebody that cares as much about that is what they do. And then, of course, if there's a rental involved, we manage, you know, take care of that and make sure it's extended out for the time it's needed to, you know, to get the customer back to where it needs to go. They also, like my job is specifically automobiles, but we do have adjusters that handle, you know, your boats and your recreational vehicles and four-wheelers and things like that as well. And so I can write those, but I don't write those. But we have a specific group that manages those, and the repair process for that is pretty much the exact same. They manage every facet of it from when it gets to the shop to when it goes back to the customer. It's just those repairs usually take a little lot longer. And we also write houses now too. They're just growing that facet of it. And so homeowners insurance is something that they're beginning to offer in some states, and trying to grow that in the other states as well. And so I would imagine in the future they'll have adjusters for that as well. I think that's all handled by the company that sells the homeowners insurance right now, but I think they're going to probably integrate that and have, you know, progressive adjusters, imagine, or be under the progressive blanket anyway.
And that's something I think that Progressive does that's unique. When we've had insurance at other places, they didn't send somebody to the body shop. Like, they just came to my house or to my work or whatever and look at it.
Right.
I mean, and then it's kind of a pain because if there is a disagreement, it takes a long time for them to get together and work it out. So
that's the thing is, if you're having as a customer to having to be the middleman, it's kind of frustrating for you because you had the wreck and then you're paying for this service for someone to take care of it for you, and so you know, in my opinion, that person, you know, that company ought to take care of it, and so you kind of want to take the customer out of having to be the middleman. You basically want them to just take if they're not going to repair it, that's great, and that's perfectly fine as well. We'll go out and we'll either write an estimate, you know, at their house if they don't want to drive, or we'll meet them at a shop and write an estimate for them, or now they're doing photo estimates, and so you take a picture of your VIN and your mileage and a few pictures of damage and a video of the damage on your car, and send it in, and they write an estimate based off those photos, and then send you a check and an estimate in the mail, and then if you decide to repair it, you know, you just give us a call and we arrange it. And so, and a lot of companies are doing that now. I think a lot of it is to minimize your cost of having adjusters, you know, and make it easy for them. That's the thing now, is with everything going to smartphones and, you know, and things like that, they want to take care, you know, make sure that they're providing a service that is convenient for people, because people's lives these days are fast and and busy and they don't have time to meet with somebody a lot of times. Most people work, during the day, or at night or whatever, and so they don't have time to wait on somebody to come out and look at their car, and so they want to make sure they have an option that fits that profile, that they can just send in, some pictures, and if it's not very bad, get a check and move on down the road. And we've seen quite a bit of growth in that. We don't do it, but like whenever they write those estimates and send them back, if they go to the shop for repairs, then at that point we step in and manage.
So can they go to progressive.com and get their insurance themselves? Can they buy it online, or do they have to go through like an independent agent or something like that?
If you prefer to go through an agent, that you can do that route, or you can go online at progressive.com and get a quote online. They show you the quotes. Progressive started the whole deal. They show you the quotes and the people, the competitors' quotes as well. And sometimes you're lower and sometimes you're not. Or you can call 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and get a quote over the phone as well.
So if you do it that way, and I just say this because we've had State Farm here, and if you purchase through their website, the agent still gets the same. They assign you an agent, and they still get the same commission. Do they assign an agent, or do you?
I don't think they assign an agent because I know they don't locally, because those policies show up as Progressive Direct policies, and everything is managed through the Direct, either online or through calling back and forth. And so you don't have any local agent presence whenever they do that. They handle everything themselves, and they send out stuff to be electronically signed and everything like that, and they mail you your documentation that you need. And that was something that was going on back when I first started with Progressive, but it hadn't grown as much as it has now. That was only 2005, but
Well, everybody didn't have smartphones in 2005.
I still had those Nokia phones that you could still get service everywhere, and hung on your belt clip. But but now that they have access to smartphones, and people are able to get to access things at a touch, and so it's a whole lot better. And back then, like my parents, they still wanted to deal with an agent. They wanted to sit down face to face with somebody and talk about it if they were going to spend money with them. And these days, a lot of times we'd rather just call or get online and take care of it ourselves and not have to worry about it. So it's definitely changed, and I would imagine that it's going to continue to evolve, as we move forward, as technology comes out. When I first started, we had Sony Mavicos. I'm sure that nobody's ever seen those gray cameras that took like the floppy disks, and you put floppy disks in and took pictures, and you put that in a file. And now we have digital cameras, but they're going to eventually switch us over to smartphones. We're just taking pictures with our iPhones, and it automatically uploads it into the cloud.
I've talked to them about that too. Like my husband, Dusty, works in underwriting, and he does everything through his phone. Everything's in the field. They have like a risk control technology software that they upload everything. And he does all his pictures of chicken houses and stuff with his phone.
That's right.
It's kind of cool.
Which makes it easier.
He used to use a camera.
Right.
Then he used to have a camera, and then he had to, use the SD card or plug it up or whatever and upload everything. But now it's all through the phone.
And it cuts down on your time.